I guess your response to the audit today.
Well, the legislative auditor issued a report today, and I mean, it's pretty breathtaking. You know, he took a look at the 79 tax incentive programs that the state has, where taxpayers are spending money to incent certain groups to expand and grow jobs. And the different agencies, there are 6 of them that are supposed to report every year on how the money was spent and what taxpayers got in return. Of the 79 incentives, only 7 of them were reported on. I mean, there are 6 agencies responsible, only 3 agencies bothered to submit reports, and those that did submit reports only reported on 7 of the 79 incentives. And I think that's outrageous. I mean, I think that's unconscionable. I think the governor ought to fire somebody. That means we got $1.3 billion out there of taxpayer money that's being spent through these agencies that they refuse to report on. And they're breaking the law. And somebody ought to be held accountable.
What about the fact that, I mean, obviously the whole report is to try to find out where this money is going and if it's even bringing anything back to the state. There is no word on whether this money is being spent wisely.
Well, you can't manage what you can't measure. And look, tax exemptions, tax incentives, they can work. They can work beautifully. You know, part of the tax code's purpose not only to raise revenue, but it's to influence behavior. And many of our tax exemptions and our incentives work. And they're helping businesses create jobs. And the ones that are working, we need to support. And we need to double down on them. Some of them, I suspect, aren't working. But the only way to find out is to go to the agencies that are administering the program and say, look, you guys are the experts. Give us a report. Tell us which ones are working and which aren't. And don't just give us your opinion. Give us the numbers. Well, of the 79 incentives that the legislature asked for reports on, the agencies only gave reports on 7 of the 79 incentives. There's $1.3 billion out there unaccounted for.
So
that's not acceptable. The governor needs to call those agencies this afternoon and say, hey, you got 24 hours to get those reports. Otherwise, you need to find yourself a new job. This just isn't acceptable.
What do you say about this all being taxpayer dollars? What do you say to those taxpayers?
I say to the taxpayers, I'm sorry. You know, as a state official, I'm embarrassed about this. I don't know why these agencies didn't do the reports. But it's $1.3 billion, and people are entitled to know whether they're getting a return on the investment. And you know, it's up to the legislature. But if I were the legislature, I wouldn't put up with this kind of nonsense. They're down there fighting right now to fund education and fund roads and to fund health care, and you got, you know, 3 agencies that didn't even bother to file a report, and those that did file a report only reported on 7 of the 79 incentives, and that's just not acceptable.
What about the fact that the state has a major budget deficit, yet the state's giving out $1.3 billion, not knowing if we're even getting a return on it?
Well, that $1.3 billion, maybe, I don't know, maybe well spent. Look, I'm not, tax exemptions and tax incentives can work. They can work, I'm telling you. I've seen them work, and many of ours are working. But the only way to know whether they're working or not is to look at each one, if not annually, at least every 2 years, and weigh the costs and the benefits. You can't just turn them loose and pray and hope that they work. You've got to go back and measure the value added. I honestly believe this. Many of our exemptions and exclusions are working. They're creating jobs. They're stimulating the economy. But I don't just accept that on faith. I'm a numbers guy. And the right way to do it is go through each one by one, and measure them. Costs, benefits. If they're working really well, you may want to double down. But if they're not working, you got to have a discussion about how to fix them or get rid of them.
Well, I guess what I was trying to ask is how important are these reports when we have a major
Well, they're
budget?
hugely important. This is $1.3 billion of taxpayer money. I mean, it speaks for itself. This is hugely important.
Compare that to the budget deficit.
Well, the budget deficit is $1.8 billion. So there you go, right there.
Emperors, the last meeting you said that you were going to try to hold a meeting within 10 days. Have you figured out?
I have spoken with the chairwoman this morning. She has sent out an email. We're going to have a meeting the week of June 15th. I don't know what day that week. She's trying to coordinate everybody's schedule. As soon as she gives me the day that will be that week, I'm supposed to get a call this afternoon. I'm going to reserve us a room in the Senate. I'm going to send an email out to all the retirees and all the mayors to tell them we're going to be meeting. They're welcome to come. or they can watch us on the internet, because we're going to stream it live on the internet. And we're going to take all 20 of these expenditures that have been challenged, the dinners at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and the Easter weekend trips to the Grand Hotel Resort in Point Clear, and we're going to expect staff to go through these expenses one by one and tell us how much was spent, who spent it, who it was spent on, and the reason they had to go spend retiree money to have a $3,000 meal at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And once we get the facts, then we're going to make a decision and let the chips fall where they may. At the same time, our legislative auditor is working as hard as he can to go through them as well. It's going to take him about 8 weeks to get his report in. But I can assure you that the board, and I'm a member of the board, I'm ex officio, I don't vote, but I take this very, very, very seriously. This is not just money that, is out there, fell out of the sky. This money belongs to the taxpayers of Louisiana, and it belongs to those retirees in the municipal employees retirement system. This is their money that was spent on what looks like a lot of extravagance, and we're going to get to the bottom of it.
And going back to what I was asking, I guess where I'm trying to go is that how important is it to make sure to find out if the tax incentives are working, because especially we have such a major budget
Well,
deficit.
we've got to. I mean, we've got to find out. We're spending all total, all in, we're spending $7.7 billion a year on exemptions. Now, let me say again, I think many of those exemptions are working, and they're achieving their purpose, and they're creating jobs. But you don't know unless you go through them, one by one by one, all 462. Every single one of them.
How important is it to show that some aren't working, though, to fix this budget deficit?
Well, it's taxpayer money that you're spending. I mean, you want to know whether taxpayers are getting a return on their investment. And the only way to do that is to get the numbers on each one and go through them one by one by one. And the ones that are working, you keep and maybe expand, and the ones that aren't working, you say, well, maybe we could spend that money better on LSU, or on fixing some roads, or on delivering some health care. Now, every one of these pools of money have constituencies, and they're going to fight hard to keep that. I understand that. But it just takes a little political courage. And the reason we're in the trouble that we're in my opinion, it's not because we don't have enough revenue. We've got more money than we've ever had adjusted for people and inflation. It's because we're not spending it right. And the problem with our budget, that $25 billion that we have to spend, we got too many people at the top, undeserving people, getting bailouts and special treatment. And we've got too many undeserving people at the bottom getting handouts. And the rest of us in the middle get the bill. And until we get that straight and change our spending habits, then we're going to continue to lurch from budget crisis to budget crisis and live from paycheck to paycheck.
Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you.